Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the HnK video game experience. As always, I am Clearfire doing the hosting today, and with us, as always, is Hollywood Cole.
What up?
Today we're going to bring you a little more retro gaming. We're actually going to do a little chatting here about what we all here in North America know as Final Fantasy II, which is technically Final Fantasy IV if you're going through the series. So we're going to start off about this game and chatting about this because this is one of the games that I remember very fondly from my childhood. I'm going to throw one of my little Clearfire-isms at you again with the whole, how I relate to this game and how it brings a special fondness to me. So I'll start you off with that and give you a little bit of funness about, why we like this game. So the reason why I know this game so well is because of one time at Easter. And I remember this because Hollywood for Easter got this video game. Got Final Fantasy II in his Easter basket. Yep. And I look at my mom after he had got this, and I look at my mom and I'm like, Mom, why did the Easter Bunny bring Hollywood a video game and only brought me candy? And to this day, I still bug my mom about that because, by this time I know the Easter Bunny's real. Then I probably didn't either, but it was still the point of, why is the Easter Bunny so good to Hollywood and not so good to Clearfire? So that's my little Clearfire-ism for you to start this. I
took a little bit of a reduction in candy that year so that I could get the Final Fantasy game. But I remember it very well, that particular thing. It was like 4:30 in the morning when I got up. I couldn't sleep that night, and I went and got it. I remember exactly what it looks like in the box and the cellophane and everything, and getting it out and breaking it out, turning it on, and hearing that opening theme song, which I'll probably put that theme song back on for this podcast. That's the first few podcasts is the Final Fantasy Cecil theme, just kind of remade. The other one's another one I just call Awaken, that I just wrote that one and throw that on there. But the first time I heard about this game was at, if you ever get the chance to do this, do it one time. If you got the time or whatever, even just the inclination, is to get an old regular Nintendo, 8-bit NES, and start playing it for a while. Play it for a week or two, and then jump to a Super Nintendo. And you see you can actually kind of relive those graphic upgrades. If you're used to playing 8-bit for a certain amount of time, then you go back to 16-bit and see it that way. It actually... You're like, wow, this is awesome. Then you can kind of redo that because you remember now you look back and you go, that's nothing. But back then it was awesome. And going over to Dre's house, and he just showed me the game. He said, "Hey, come here, let me show you this." I'm just laughing because I remembered it was at a birthday party one time. But he showed it to me. Our jaws just dropped. Like, what? This is awesome. That first scene where the Red Wings are flying in and that song, it's just coming up, and it's just you seeing the land move under you at mode 7. Graphics and anyway, he had a birthday party and he's wanted to show everybody, and we all went back in the back room. We were sitting there about to start it, and he goes, "Here, Marcus, just show him." He gave me the control, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to control the game, and show everybody how awesome this is going to be. But such a great story. That's just the Final Fantasy II experience for us. As you said, Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy IV. Nowadays it'll be Final Fantasy IV because they've kind of released 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
3. What? Final Fantasy 3. Did they release that one? I don't think they released that one
here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think they've released them all in some type of either anthology or whatnot. I think they've all been released. I'll double check that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. I don't think they did.
But I know that 1 and 2 had been released here because, if I'm not mistaken, 1 on the NES is 1 in Japan as well. I think that was the only ones that stayed the same.
They did release
mistaken.
3 because 3 was on the DS.
That's right.
I own 3 on the DS. But I did not like that one. I don't like the DS version. The way they get the characters kind of all blocky. Not even blocky. It's like triangle-y. It's kind of hard to explain. I don't like the way they look at all. Just look it up, Final Fantasy 3 on the DS. I couldn't play that one very far.
So Final Fantasy 4 now, if you ever do want to play it and you don't have a Super Nintendo, you can actually get it on just about any type of gaming system, iPhone or on your Android device. That way you can get some nostalgia. The thing is, though, you're not going to have the same graphics as the way it was when we got to play it originally. It's going to have a little more updated graphics, which I actually don't like. I think that, being a retro gamer, I think that the original graphics are going to be the best way to play it. So if you can't do that, I don't encourage or endorse an emulator, but if you have to and that's your only way, jump on an emulator and hit it up and try it out.
Yeah, sometimes the translations are wrong, and kind of the charm of it, the Super Nintendo version, was the translations kind of being off, and like you spoony barred is what Tell always tells Edward.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of stuck with like pop culture, but one of the great ways to play it, one of my favorite ways, is the PSP version, the After Years, because they actually did it's a remake, and they have an After Years, like whatever happened to Cecil after this, when Rosa at the end of the game, which we'll talk about, but and it kind of, there's a medium section where it talks about, and they have a son named Theodore, who then goes on to you can follow his quest line all the way through, and it has all the different characters, and I didn't even finish it. There's just so much of it. But anyway, on that game you can go back and play the original. It's a remade edition, the Final Fantasy 4. It's called the complete collection, or After Years. I'm trying to look over there at it, but it's a PSP. It's only PSP Final Fantasy 4 that you can get, and it's the graphics look really good. It's high definition, and I've been waiting to go back and finish the game again in those graphics. But that's, this is a good one. It's a great story, and the guy that I'm gonna have to look his name up. The guy that everybody knows the story for Final Fantasy. Actually, I'm gonna look it up before I start talking about it.
So what were you gonna say? I've got it pulled up actually here.
What's the guy's name that wrote the very first one?
This is the director is I cannot say his name. Hironobu Shikage. It's his name is spelled. The director of this game is the writer is actually Takashi Takeda, and I think that's one of the first writers. And then the other guy, I cannot, like I said, I can't pronounce his name. I don't.
Is it Hironobu?
Hironobu, yeah.
Sakaguchi, yeah. He wrote this. This was he was in a failing software company, and he wrote this as kind of like, this is going to be my final fantasy that I'm going to write for the regular NES, Final Fantasy 1. And it took off as a hit, So this is he wrote 2 and 3 as well that were not released in America, but Final Fantasy 4 was, as Final Fantasy 2, as we said. Mm-hmm. And it focused more on, it kind of took all the elements for 1, 2, and 3 and combined them for the best possible product to that date for the Final Fantasy stuff, which the active time battle system was introduced, and stuff like that. But it was great. It's more focused on story, because you'll notice, like when Final Fantasy 6, I'm sure we'll talk about that one, is more characterized, kind of what they call characterization, where you kind of follow each character, you let them develop, and you kind of come to like them. Mm-hmm. And you can do that too with Final Fantasy 4 as well, but it was more, you didn't really have a whole lot of control who was in your party and who wasn't. It kind of just happened. So you didn't really say, hey, I like Yang, I want to keep Yang in my party.
Exactly.
You're not going to. Yeah. It's going to develop. It's more focused on the story, and the story was excellent. But
yeah, this is probably one of my favorite just stories, because it was the one that really got you and me into role playing games. I mean, this really really started our whole gaming together more hardcore than anything. I mean, yeah, we had played Street Fighter, we played other games at up to this point, and we're gaming together, but this one was really the one that took off. And another memory that I have of this game that I'd like to kind of humanize more about it is the fact that when I was younger, I got sick a lot. I got sick a ton, and Hollywood didn't. He was always pretty healthy kid. I was a very sickly kid. I had a lot of lung problems and stuff like that growing up. So a lot of the times is Hollywood, he would either come over or I'd go over to his house and he'd play the game and I'd watch it like a movie. So I felt like this a lot of the times, a lot of these role-playing games were like a movie to us, Yeah, we worked together and played these games together, but most of the time he was controlling, or even sometimes I was controlling, but it was like a movie, and that's how we got into these games really hardcore, because with two of us playing the game together, we were able to dig more into different things. Sometimes I'd see something he wouldn't, he'd see something I wouldn't, and it was just really neat having that kind of thing there. And that's really what built our friendship there, was being able to have those times of playing together. So I remember a lot of times laying in my bed sick as a dog, Marcus would come brave my sickness and play this for me, and so it was.
I remember
it was a lot of fun. So that was some fond memories growing up, and
yeah, those stories that the story aspect of this game. A lot of people to this day still, I don't like story. I just want to go kill or whatever and do the thing. But back in the NES days when Zelda came out, everybody was pumping in quarters in arcades. They were real popular, and they just wanted a quick fix for that 25 cents. Well, now you have these experience. They try to bring the arcades to home, at first when video games were first developed. But now, hey, I can sit here and play as much as I want. So, Zelda came out, so we want a more in-depth experience. So they're still kind of trying to experiment with this deal. Of course, I just said Final Fantasy 1 was out, which was a pretty story-enriched, and you got Dragon Warrior. So you're starting to see those role-playing games take form. But now with this Super Nintendo that is coming out, and this game came out in 91, the same year as the NES. The NES came out in 90 or 91, right around the same time. I can't remember. But anyway, so now you're having these brand new updated graphics. You can the game was, I don't know, it had 30 hours maybe. I don't know, but that's a huge amount of time to play a video game and to really get engrossed in the story and to see the art form kind of start to develop. And these true writers and composers. I mean, you can go online. This is my favorite thing to do. I love when it's time for the kids' bath. I'll go in there and I'll get my Bluetooth speaker or whatever and just put on like some piano Super Nintendo music, and you can really see the depth of these songs and the composition that these composers put together. The music is just beautiful. Not only in this song, but some like Sonic the Hedgehog. You got these people, super guitar bros playing guitar to these songs and really breaking it out like that. Man, it is some great. That's some really complex and in-depth songs, and it's just you don't really hear it on the 16-bit, but you can hear it great on the 16-bit. So Final Fantasy 4 has some great music. Even coming through the Super NES cart, but man, when you really break it down on piano or something, it is beautiful. It's some of my favorite music to this day.
It really is. I mean, it's impressive what they were able to do with the 16-bit music and compose it out. If you go now, you can actually find some of it, that's actually done beyond the 16-bit and makes it sound, even better than what it was 16-bit wise. But I mean, you got to look at it. The technology back then to have this 16-bit music was it was unbelievable. I mean, it was great. It fit every aspect of the game. There was no real place where you're like, that music didn't really work. You were like, every time you hear that music now, I mean, to this day, when we hear certain parts of these songs, when we put these bits into our podcast, we're sitting here thinking of, okay, that's Cecil coming in, or that's Cecil turning into a paladin, that's all these different parts because they tied the music so well to what was going on in the game, and it wasn't just left there as just filler. It was something to enhance the game, and it was really fantastically done.
So, do you remember how the game starts off and everything? As you're Cecil flying in from the Red Wings.
Yeah, I remember
Cecil. He had a bunch of different names. Dark Knight. That's what was so cool. The Dark Knight version, right? So nobody knows what's going to happen or whatever, of course. But the Dark Knight, captain of the Red Wings, flying in, stealing crystals from all over the land. You kind of feel like you're doing it on the wrong side. Go talk to the king about it. He banishes you with your best friend Kane, because Kane comes in to defend him. So you're traveling off. That kind of just kicks off the whole adventure. You go to the village of Mist, open the package that the king sent with it, destroys the village. There's a little summoner kid there named Rydia, and so on and so. I'm not going to go through the whole entire story, but at some point, they come back to Mysidia, in which that's the land that he originally destroyed in the opening scene, or at least stole the crystal from the opening scene. So he's apologizing and all this, and they say, well, hey, okay, well, you're forgiven, but they're a little upset about it. But they try to teach him how to kind of stop Golbez, who's introduced as the new captain of the Red Wings when Cecil is removed, and he's this evil black mage and warrior and black knight, dark knight with magical power. And so you have to become the light, right? And so you have to go be that paladin, be the paladin. That's the first time I was ever introduced with the paladin, which I think is still my favorite character. I always pick a paladin if I play one of these like RPGs or something, and I got that choice. I'm always going to pick that. I think that's a cool one to be. But anyway, he has to go conquer himself, conquer his old self, and now he's the paladin, Cecil Paladin, and he's the good guy. And so he's off on his quest from there. So I mean, I don't want to get into the whole story, but just kind of that was a big deal back then. It's kind of a transition showing the depth of character and how he had to overcome that. And Golbez releases his 4 fiends to try to stop him, and that was the wind, water, fire, and death. And death is actually the first one.
Yep.
His name is Milton. On the is that his name, Milton? Let me look it up. It's something like that. I think it is Milton. Let's look up 4 fiends. Final Fantasy 4. I'm pretty sure it's Milton. There's something like that, because I was thinking Milton. That's the death guy. But it's probably gonna pull up different. Yeah, they pull him up in the Japanese name, which is Scarmeglione, something like that. But that's not the English translation over to. And it was Siren. It's not Barba. Celia Rubicon was the same, and the I think it was just what was that one? Cagnazzo was the water one. That was not.
Yeah, I got
what it was called.
Yeah, I got Cagnazzo is one of the names here. I'm trying to find all the names.
Yeah, so I'm gonna look up the English for the U.S. release.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the Final Fantasy IV version, so not the. I want to go to characters. It doesn't give me that. But while he's looking that up, I just want to say, with this game, it was really cool, like he was talking about. I mean, it is a full-blown redemption story for Cecil, and it directly follows Cecil through the entire story. It's basically a story of Cecil and his redemption from doing all of these quote-unquote terrible things from his perspective. From anybody's perspective, something can be considered good. But from his perspective, and from most of the world's perspective in the game, doing those bad things. And he redeems himself and becomes a paladin and goes off to save things. Because we all know paladins are actually, warriors of the light. So that was a good thing. And then also to something that Hollywood brought up was the crystals. Crystals are actually a big part of Final Fantasy lore. A lot of the games had where you were trying to save a crystal, recover a crystal, replace a crystal. I mean, there was all these different. It was a lot of the games were based around that. And another one, I don't know if we'll do a podcast on this or not because it wasn't a very popular one, but it was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. That game was that game was completely wrapped around the crystals in it. I liked it too because it was one of the ones that I'd bought that I was like, oh, I found this one before Hollywood did. Let me show it to them. So
that was actually a release of. They were trying to make a Americanized RPG, trying to make it simple, and they just
it fell flat.
Destroyed it.
Fell flat on its face, but it was still kind of fun.
It's got some charm, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, there was a lot of places in it that were really difficult, but it was still a neat game. But I mean, like you said, I mean, this game is really a really great redemption story, and it was one of those that you felt the depth of the character grow as you went through the story. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm sorry for this. Let me move on to the next town and say I'm sorry. It was actually, you really felt like you were following Cecil and seeing his true redemption story. He was feeling the feelings that he was feeling because it actually displayed that very well. Especially for a 16-bit game, you could see that kind of sadness with Cecil, mourning over different things, and it was just a great evolution throughout all of the game, and so just a fun game to play.
Yeah, so I can't find. I'm pretty sure it's Milton, but it's not Siren for the wind. It's Valvalis was her name. That was the wind fiend, and then Rubicant, and I can't remember that the water one's name. But anyway, it's just so crazy. It's just lost lost forever. You got to go back and play the original version, I guess.
Yeah, probably so. But hey, that gives us a reason to go back and play the game.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
But anyway, at some point along the line, they find a bunch of these mages, old men, Tela and Fushaya, of all the weird names. But they try to find that mystical spell, this real complicated spell called Meteor, which Tela cannot cast it. If he does, what he tries to cast to kill Golbez, who killed his daughter. That whole thing. It's real complicated, which is great. But he can't cast Meteor because it'll kill him. But he does end up sacrificing his life to do it, and it hurts Golbez. Doesn't kill him. He somehow comes back, but then you eventually learn it. I mean, actually, Rydia actually learns it if you give her enough time. But apart from the story, they start to introduce like rare drops, rare items, and stuff that you can just pass right over in the story if you don't want to do it. For instance, the rat tail that you get. And you can turn it in. You get it from enemy. I can't remember if you get it from. I can't remember. This has been so long.
Yeah, I know.
Do you remember where you get the rat tail?
No, that's what I'm trying to see if I see anything on it on this one that I'm looking at.
I think it's just a standard. It's just a standard part of the quest. You get the rat tail when you get to Bahamut, and they give you then some adamant. You turn it into the right people. They give you an item called adamant, and then you turn that into the little miners or the little blacksmith, and they'll give you a better weapon called Excalibur. So stuff like that just kind of got to remember who you talk to turn in your items to get better, stronger items, or you don't have to get it and you just keep going and you can still finish the game, but you just won't be as efficient. It's still a very linear game. There's a couple of side quests. Edge's home castle is one that you can go in and fight. And you get the drain sword there. There's a couple of other little towns that you go to. You can go to this cave of the summons cave, and walk around there. You get the frying pan from you find Yang. He's knocked out, and they got those sylphs around him. And then you go tell his wife where he's at, so she gives you a frying pan to go bust him over the head with to wake him up, and you do, and he wakes up, and but he's too weak to fight, so then the sylphs.
What's funny about the frying pan thing too is in Japanese, a lot of the time in Japanese video games, a lot of the times you see women with frying pans. That was kind of a running gag, especially in the older games. They have that. It's kind of a running gag in there. So, and to kind of take off on that a little bit, just so y'all know, the reason why Final Fantasy IV was actually 2 here in the transition there was because they actually wanted to take a lot of the overt Judeo-Christian religious references out of the game and potentially objectable graphics. Over in Japan, they pretty much did whatever they wanted, however they wanted, and they had a lot of Christian references in their games. That was actually kind of, to me, I thought it was odd because it's like, well, Japan culture is not a hugely Christian culture, but these were, a lot of people were converted by this time and everything over there. So, but for example, the magic spell Holy was actually renamed White for the U.S. version, and all references to prayer were eliminated. So there was actually no references to prayer in the game. And the Tower of Prayers in Mysidia is renamed the Tower of Wishes for us. I really remember the Tower of Wishes, and now reading this, I was like, oh yeah, I remember reading something about that years later after playing it. But they pretty much took all that, and direct references to death were also omitted, although you could see several characters die during the course of the game, and that's a direct quote from this article that I'm reading. But we had a lot of censorship that I think actually that hurt the game industry, and I think some of the later versions of the game that were re-releases, I think they included some of this as well. So you could go back and play some of the re-releases that have that. Don't take my word for it, but I think that's correct.
Yeah, Yeah, they always did that. Nintendo has, I don't know why in America they did that a lot. Seems to be backwards, the land of the free where you get all kind of free stuff. And now it's like the opposite. Now games or movies, is particularly music, they always have an agenda to push, whether that be, some type of, very rarely a Christian agenda, but, some type of agenda that they're trying to push on you. And back in the day, they tried to keep that out of the stuff. I wish they kind of would still do that now. Well, just entertain us. We don't care about your personal.
Exactly. Well, what was really crazy about this is Nintendo was doing this, and this is before the ESRB even came out. So this is before we actually had ratings on video games and and all that. And they're actually already doing this editing. So they were actually some of the pioneers of editing, which kind of makes me sad because it's like, why take that out? That's actually a very integral part to that game. Don't break it down because we might be too sensitive. I mean, that's kind of crazy there. We don't need to PC everything down. I think that, if somebody feels strongly about something, they should share it, and so that was the vision of the director. I'm not the type of person that likes to piddle with what the director thinks we should see. I think that the director should have full control of what we see, but that's my little rant about directors should get their rights because that's their vision and we should enjoy their true vision. So
yeah, that's true. If you don't like it, just don't buy it. I mean, it's
exactly.
Pretty much all that it comes down to. This back to the weird kind of things they had. They had some of the summons that you could get as Rita. She learned a lot as she leveled up, and so when she pops back in the game, when Golbez defeats everybody, you hadn't seen her in a long time. She pops back in. She leaves as a kid and pops back in as an adult. Mm-hmm. And she has all these summons where you can talk to all these different characters along your quest, and you will, Bahamut and Leviathan, and her the queen of the summoned lands, the healer Ashura, I think is her name. But so that's one way to get them. Other ways you can get them is by killing certain enemies that might drop a summons, like the imps. And I remember I got this one by accident, the imp. And I'm looking at some now. They had a bomb summon, a cockatrick summon, mage summon. You just get them by killing those enemies. But the imp summon was just so weak. I mean, what's the point of even doing it? I mean, it's such a random. It's a 1 in 64 chance to drop. So you're talking less than a 2% chance. And why? Why is it so hard to get? It does nothing. It does like 10 damage to something. It's just one of those rare, weird things. And at some point in the game too, when you go to the mystical cave, I believe, where you have to fight all the trap doors every time you try to open a door, you find a shadow sword for Cecil, for Dark Knight Cecil, and it's like there's no point of it. You can't use it.
They're not Dark Knight anymore.
Yeah, but and that's like the first one. I think it's Shadow, Darkness, and Black is what this order that he would get all his armor and stuff when he was the Dark Knight. But I mean, you get it for Edge can throw it, and that may be the whole point of it. But it's just kind of a weird thing. You wonder how that got in there. But one of the super rare items is the pink tail. And I found this one out way late in life. I never knew about this when we were playing it. But the pink tail drops from the pink puffs. And it's these little, they're little gel creatures that only magic hurts. And you eventually fight a group of them. I think it's like 6 of them. And you just, however you kill them, and there's a 1 in 64 chance. They loved 1 in 64 chance. To kill, for it to drop the pink tail. Drops the pink tail, you get to take it to the tail collector, same place you turned in the rat tail earlier that we spoke about, and you'll get a piece of armor called the adamant armor, and that's like that's the most powerful armor in the game. And that was an awesome thing to get. It's just fun to have something else to go try to play for when I finished the game. But this is one that I own this. Let me just think real quick. I don't own it on Super Nintendo. It's one of the ones I don't have. It's about $40 now, or it was maybe a year ago. I don't know what it's at now. It's going to be somewhere around maybe 50 now. But
I can tell you in just a second.
But I have it on PSP, and I actually have it on DS, the DS remake too, which that one was very difficult. I got to the end of it, where I'm in the final stage, and Edge, he dies with like 2 hits. He's just so weak, and he's got the best armor on, so I don't know what they did to kind of trick it out a little bit different, but I went back and played through that one. But this is one that I just hadn't really played through a whole lot.
It's around $60, by the way. So if you want
really?
to get
it's already going up?
You could get it for 60. And that's hitting right at Amazon with buying it used and whatnot. It's $59.98.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's going up for sure. It used to be about 40.
you can still
It was
get
actually a cheaper one.
You can still get some for 40 and all that, but I think that is if you really want the box and everything, so you're gonna pay about 60 for it.
Oh
so.
yeah, I'm just talking loose. Yeah, I'm not even talking box.
Yeah, loose is probably gonna be around 40. This one says 42, 30, 33. You might can get a little cheaper if you dig. I just was pulling something up real quick. So
they're around 40.
Which, speaking of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, it's actually, since we mentioned it earlier, it's sitting at $300. So
that's not true.
that's somebody selling it on there for a box copy for $300. That's kind of funny.
Well, a box copy maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be about a $20 game. Let's see. No, it's not even $20 now. Wow.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, you're talking $10, $15.
Well, somebody is trying to rip you off on Amazon. Do not go to Amazon and buy Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. You can get it somewhere cheaper.
Well, if it's sealed and all this, it's different. I'm not a big sealed game collector, but
well, no, because you want to play them. I mean, what's the point of having it sealed? You don't get to play it,
Yeah, I wouldn't mind open. I mean, I wouldn't pay as much to get a seal. I wouldn't mind a complete copy of Final Fantasy VI that I may get eventually, but I just got the regular copy. I do like to play them, and I hadn't bought an old school game in a while, but let's see how much this is. Yeah, so it's about $50, $60 for Final Fantasy III.
Mm-hmm.
This is loose. Everything's loose is what I'm talking about. Yeah, $60. These are only acceptable copies. And you can go by Amazon, because you go on eBay, it's going to be about... Amazon's a very quick reference, and like you said, you can do some digging, but most of the time, Amazon is right there. A good copy is $70. So now you're starting to get up there. And you want a good copy of these games.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can't stand... I got all the Dragon Warrior. I got Dragon Warrior 1, 2, 3, and 4. And my Dragon Warrior 2 came in. It just trash, man. And I just don't like it. I mean, it plays fine.
Yeah, but you will still
beat up.
Yeah, you still want the cartridge to look good. So, but back to Final Fantasy II, something that I liked and didn't like at the time when I played the game. I didn't like it. It was the fact that for the longest of the game, you had to walk everywhere. You eventually found a chocobo. You could ride the chocobo. Or chocobo. A lot of people call it, call it different things. I always call it chocobo. I'll always call it that. I'm a southerner country, and that's just, that's what's going to come out of my mouth when I say it. But you finally got to ride it, and it didn't really move you around a lot more fast. It didn't run you around more faster, but it did get you around a little bit better. And yes, I'm using terrible English tonight. You'll have to excuse me on some of that.
It was faster. You don't have to worry about enemies and whatnot.
Yeah, you could dodge your enemies. Well, the thing is, though, too, is, something that, I didn't mind doing, but actually Hollywood didn't. He didn't like dodging enemies. I remember that, he's like, oh, there's an enemy, let me go fight it. He was always wanting to jump down fighting enemies. And I was like, let me get through this quick. I want to hurry up, finish the game, find out the ending. I want to find the ending of the story. So
well, the enemies were invisible, so they were just random encounters. But I always like to grind, because I always like to get more powerful or whatever. But that's just kind of what it's for, and that's a unique Japanese thing that he did. A lot of Americans don't like it. They've kind of taken it out of all the modern RPGs. Especially, like, look at Final Fantasy 15, you see all the enemies on your screen.
Exactly. You see
same way for 12.
You see all the enemies on your screen, and you get to start driving earlier. Like, I mean, you had the car right off the bat in Final Fantasy 15. You have mode of transportations really quick. So, I mean, to me, it kind of takes away from the fun aspect of it, because you're not forced to explore as much. And that's something that, at the time, I didn't like of Final Fantasy II, but, from playing that and playing other ones, subsequent Final Fantasies and other RPGs is, I learned to explore more. They taught me, go check out that cave over there. It might suck fighting those guys in there, but you're going to come away with some really awesome loot. Go fight that cave. And these games, for us older gamers, it trained us to actually go explore stuff. And that's what I liked about it. And Final Fantasy II had that. And too bad we didn't really learn that when we were playing it. I wish we would have done more of that when we were playing it. But, going back, looking at it, getting to play it over again, we got to learn that and see what we missed too. You don't get the airship until almost the very end, and so you don't get really fast traveling until like almost the very end of Final Fantasy 2, which that was kind of a thing throughout all of Final Fantasies. I remember Final Fantasy 8, if I'm not mistaken, you get the Ragnarok ship, toward the very end of that game, which the ship was awesome and you could go anywhere super fast, but it's like you had to use these travel stations and everything to get from point A to point B, and it drug the game out, but once again it was training us to actually play the game and actually go find things. And two, the airship was kind of cool because you actually could go below ground with it, that once you got a drill bit for it. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, you get the drill bit, you can go down.
Mm-hmm.
There's several different areas where you're down in that underground part. Part of the story, you crash down in there, and then you can't. Your ship is busted, so you have to go to that dwarf and king,
mm-hmm.
and that's when you have to fight that baby doll boss. That was hard.
That was tough.
It's like 6 different little baby dolls, and it's kind of freaky too. They're like hopping around and they're like just these little rag dolls. Like what in the world? And anyway, you got to kill. If you can kill 6 of them, they're like blue and red, I think, and then you try to kill them as fast as you can. But whatever you do, they're always going to combine. They'll always eventually combine into this one big baby doll, just standing there like the eyeballs hanging out. No,
yes! Oh my gosh! Yes.
It's so funny, but it's just like, this thing was. I remember that being difficult. That and the 4 fiends and the 3 sisters were the most difficult one.
Yep.
The 3 sisters, the Tower of Magnus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to go to, but they have a big tall one in the back. So you're looking right at the screen. Let's see how.
Oh, that was like right toward the end of the game, correct?
Well, no, it's about midway.
Okay, yeah, no, that wasn't the Tower of Babel, because you have the Tower of Babel in this game.
Yeah, all the guys are all your characters. You can have 5 characters. All right, so they're all on the right side of the screen, and it's turn based. And you have a front and a back row. Your front row guys are going to do more damage, but they're going to take more damage. So you want your mages back in the back because they don't take as much damage because they can't, because they're cloth wearers or whatever, standard Dungeons and Dragons type stuff. But magic is not hindered by being on the back row. The damage is still the same. So anyway, that's where you are on the right side of the screen. On the left side of the screen, you're going to have your enemies. Well, on the back left, you have the big tall girl. I don't remember her name, of course. Then you got a little round fat girl, then a small girl. Well, those are the 3 sisters. The tall one would constantly cast wall on the middle one. The middle one they would cast all the spells on you or whatever. You want to kill the middle one. The middle one's the most dangerous one, but you can't. You have to kill the back one first, so she'll stop casting wall, because wall is just like reflect. And every time you try to cast a big heavy hitting spell on the middle one, it would reflect back at you. But anyway, the point is that this type of strategy was kind of introduced on how to kill these multiple enemies that were like that. So this is kind of the first time that wow, you got to really think about what you're doing here and use you got a certain amount of spells you can cast, a certain amount of items you can use, and there's also weaknesses to weapons. So if you have an ice sword, a fire guy would be weak against that. And vice versa. You had to really kind of think about how to strategize and get your character loadouts to be the best that they possibly could in order to beat some of these bosses. But those 3 sisters, and this is still back close enough in the day where, you buy a game, there's no guarantee you're going to finish it. You would play it, and then like me and Clear or anybody in school would just be like, hey, I got to stage 3. Really? You got to stage 2? What's at the end of stage 2? Oh, it's a big, a big dragon you got to kill, something like that. But if you didn't get past stage 3, whatever. It's just a tough game. You just accepted it. You didn't know any better.
Exactly.
Now, everybody kind of goes, hey, I paid money for play this game. I can't even play the full game. I paid full price for it. I should be able to play the full game all the way through at some point. And there's some games that are like Dark Souls and all that are kind of bringing back that hard factor, that difficulty factor.
So I found the 3 sisters' name. The frontmost sister is Mindy. The backmost is Sandy. And the middle sister is Cindy. So those are the 3 sisters. And to talk more about Hollywood's fact of games being harder back then than they are now, man, that made games so much fun. Because like you said, you go to school, you're talking to your buddies, dude, how did you do that? You know, and you had the communication. You made a community with each other. Now, you know, especially playing games now, it's just like, you know, people are like, I hate to use Destiny. I hate to keep on bringing Destiny in it, but it's the one I'm kind of stuck on right now. Is Destiny 2. When Xur comes out every Friday, nobody actually goes and looks for him. They Google it or they go to a page and ask for help. And it's like, dude, it's so easy to find him. He's even marked on a map. Just turn on your game. You know, and I think that's kind of lost in the video games nowadays, is that everybody automatically goes into communities or whatnot before they even turn the game on to ask for help. And it's like, at least put forth some effort before you ask for help, you know. It's great that we've got these communities out there. You know, I'm not knocking any of them because a lot of them have given me help when I've needed it, but I also haven't gone to these communities before I even turn the game on to try to do some discovery myself, you know. And that's what I think made the games back then, were the fact that, you know, the way you asked for help was you tried for hours to beat this. You couldn't do it. And then you find your buddy next door down the street beat it, and you're like, how did you do that? What is your key? Even then, even when you ask for that help, replicating what they did is not always the easiest thing, because you take, for instance, like a Final Fantasy here. You can't really replicate the steps that Hollywood did to beat this one boss. I mean, you can if he actually wrote it down on paper. Okay, your first action this, your next action that. You couldn't do it. You could just take his ideas and apply it to your strategy. You know, if his strategy was to put your healers, you know, in the back and your warriors in the front, yeah, you can replicate that, but you can't replicate his actual battle implications, what happens, because those bosses react differently each time, and that's what I kind of liked about it. A boss didn't always cast this one spell at the same time always. You know, you do have some that do that, but, you know, when you start fighting with these bosses, they react to what's happening to them, and that was really kind of, you know, a neat thing. That's what happened with the active battle system that was introduced in the Final Fantasy, for us too, Final Fantasy 2.
Well, some of the, you know, newer things in games, there's a welcome change. And I was just talking to Drew about this before we even got on the podcast, was, you know, Batman, for one example, the NES version, Batman. Great game. I went back and tried to play it, and I own that one and started playing that one recently. And remember how fun it was. Let's just see how far I can get now. And you get to like stage 4 or something, any stage you want to get to, and you play. It's just trial and error. That's how those games were back in the day, Mega Man and all this, trial and error. And then you get to the end and die. Guess what? You got to start that entire stage over, and that is a pain. It's hard enough to get there one time and get there with so much life and all this. There's the difficulty, of course. You know, of course, you can get into the classics like Ghost and Ghouls, and all this is just known for difficulty, but. And they say Contra is the hardest one, and I ended up mastering that one. But
yeah.
But they, you know, it's you die. But Contra, you die, you're gonna respawn right where you died.
Yeah.
But I can't stand, you know, when you finally get all the way. There's no checkpoint or anything. You die, you got to go all the way back to the beginning of the stage. And if you die enough times, you're not to continue. You just got to start the whole game over. Well, and you're like, and there's no passwords or anything. You just got to play it all the way through.
A game that really just always got me was Battletoads. You know, that game had some tough places in it, and you had a few chances. You died. You started at the beginning of the board. You know, you could die and be right there at your spot once or twice, but like that third death, you're at the beginning of the board. You die again after that, it's game over. You got to start that game completely over. And man, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I feel like, you know, at times when I played that game, I felt like I was the inventor of rage quitting, because I can remember just getting so mad as a kid, throwing my controller down, walking away, like, I'm never playing that game again. It made me so mad, you know. I can remember doing that and actually, you know, rage quitting then, so.
Yeah, Battletoads is an awesome game.
That was a great game.
Still
I loved
so fun. Nobody could get past the when you're on that little wakeboard, or what is it, the little jet ski type thing, where you dodge and all the things. I could get past it now pretty easy, but the next stage, you know, there's an ice stage that I can get through that one. But then there's the one I always die at now. There's a bunch of warps you can take, but the one I die at now is the surfing stage. Oh, that's a tough one, man. That's the same kind of thing as the jet ski one, but yeah, that game's a lot of fun too. And there's something to be said for that, just the controls and what game was I'm thinking something else as I'm talking to you about just how good it feels to control the game, and just play it. That says a lot. I mean, I wasn't going to talk about Destiny, but just look at Destiny. There's not a lot of content, but it's just still a lot of fun to go in there and shoot stuff because it's the controls and as we talked about last time. So that kind of goes a long way. Mega Man.
Yeah.
It's the same concept every single Mega Man. There's so many bosses. You go in there and pick one random one. Hopefully, you pick the right one that you can kill with the X Buster.
Exactly.
You can learn the pattern, and you get that one. Then you go find the boss that's weak to that one, and so on and so forth. Weak to that boss you just killed. But
I mean, like I said, with great controlling games, it's those games that you can play, get lost in, because you're not having to think about what button you got to press next. You just know it. You just feel it. It's got that feel to it.
Exactly.
And Final Fantasy actually has that to it, in my opinion. You just feel it. I don't ever have to, when I play a Final Fantasy, I don't ever have to look down at my controller. I can just sit there, press my buttons, and keep on going. Even Final Fantasy 15 playing it, I didn't have to look down at my controller any, and I could just pick it up and start playing. So they did a really good job for those. And the thing that helped that kind of game was the fact that it was a turn-based RPG. So it slowed down a lot of the button pushes when you're actually in the fighting. But in other places, you didn't have to pay attention to it. Yeah, granted, you were playing with a controller. It has a lot less buttons than what we have now. But, to us, that was a ton of buttons. I remember when the Super Nintendo came out and you got the bumpers and you got four buttons on the side. It's like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to press all these buttons? How am I ever going to use them all? Well, you quickly found out you use them very easily, and that was actually, to me, that was a really well-designed gamepad as well.
Yeah, that's a good point about the Final Fantasy 15. Like, think about that for a minute. Well, that's just what I was thinking about when you're saying that. How many other games have a 15 after them?
Yeah.
It stayed. That's how popular this game. This is the defining RPG of Final Fantasy 7. Got more people involved in RPGs. That was for PlayStation than any other RPG in history. Like you said, we discovered them in 91 or whatever, Final Fantasy 2 when they had Dragon Warrior. Dragon Warrior just released you out into the wild and said go. It wasn't really a whole lot of story. There's some lore in the kingdom and all that, but it wasn't like a story that was put together. But this kind of spurred my whole RPG. I was a diehard fan at that point.
Yeah.
After that, Final Fantasy 3 came out. I love that one. That's still my favorite game to this day. But then after that, you got Chrono Trigger, Lucians of Gaia, anything that had that turn-based, Secret of Mana, anything that had that turn-based type of game that numbers are flying off when you're hitting them. Man, I was crazy about it.
Well, then too, look at Final Fantasy. It's one of the only game franchises that has spawned 2 online games, and they're both still actually active played games. The people still play Final Fantasy 11. I know somebody that still plays it to this day. There's not a ton of people playing it anymore, but it's an MMO that's still on there. And I know a ton of people that play Final Fantasy 14, which is an MMO as well. And it's got this great huge world. And when you look at the game, there's not 15 of them. There's a lot more than 15 because you've got you've got Mystic Quest, you've got Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 10-2, you got Final Fantasy 12-2 or whatever they call it. Final Fantasy.
You're talking about 13.
13, yeah,
13-2, 13 verse. But they have verses. They got Final Fantasy Tactics. You got Dissidia. I mean, you got
a couple of tactics now actually.
Yeah, there's a ton of tactics. A2. And that's on the DS. Final Fantasy, like you said, Mystic Quest. I'm just thinking about them. But Final Fantasy Adventure, which is actually a Secret of Mana. What's it called? It's a Sudokian. I'm going to mess it up, but it's what it's called in Soka Densetsu or something like that. That's actually Secret of Mana in Japan. And the Final Fantasy Legends, or Final Fantasy Adventure, was the first Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana was the second one, and then you had Suken Densetsu 3 that was not released. There's actually some English translations you can get, and I found it on an emulator and started playing it. I was like, this game is awesome. What is this? I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just something somebody made up or something, but that was a great one. I got Illusion of Gaia. That one was okay. But that was another trilogy with Soul Blazer was the first one, Illusion of Gaia, and then Terra Nigma, which is a phenomenal game, and I actually own a copy of that, but there's something with the battery. It never saves it saved my game, but if as long as you turn the game on within the next like 3 or 4 days, it'll be saved. I don't know how that works, and somebody changed the battery out for me, and it worked for a little while, but now it doesn't work. But anyway, that's got 4 chapters, and that's a very interesting game. It's kind of like you start off in hell, and so it's not like it's going to be an action game, but it's not. And you're just kind of like, oh, you're gonna go. You're like in some underworld. I don't know if it's hell, but you're in some underworld, and you got to start your. It's called. I didn't expect to talk about Terra Nigma, but
actually, I think it is hell because if I'm not mistaken, Terra Nigma was modified greatly for US because of how much religious connotations it had in the game.
Well, that's the thing. It was never released in the US.
Okay, never. I'm sorry.
So that's
different
why,
game I'm talking about. Yeah,
that's what I was gonna get to. Is because you go and you release a continent or something, and all of it just kind of it tells a story of mankind. Kind of, it's just weird, and somehow your character is creating the continents, introducing religion, introducing all these different things to the people. It's really interesting. I never finished it because, like I said, it kept deleting it, and I tried to play it on the emulator. I don't like playing on emulators, but they didn't release something because it literally had crosses and with Jesus on it and everything. So that one wasn't released, but that was a fun game to play. Just never finished it.
Yeah. But as y'all can see, I mean, the Final Fantasy II for the both of us has spawned us into all these other role-playing games. And Final Fantasy in itself, just the entire, I can't say trilogy because there's a heck of a lot more than that. Its entire game compilation spans, well over, what, I'd probably say more than 30 games roughly, doesn't it?
Yeah, something like that. But the thing that I don't like is they always have to try to improve something, in terms. It's nothing wrong with always improving. I shouldn't say that. They always have to change something.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with the battle system? Final Fantasy X had the best battle system.
Yes, it did.
That was there. Well, we got to change it in 12 because everybody's complaining about encounters that are, random encounters, and it's still not turn-based. Which Final Fantasy X would show you like 15 moves to end or something like that, that you can plan out who's going to attack next and all this, and how haste actually helps your characters and slow hurts the enemy and so on and so forth. And I like 12. The 12 remake, or 12 remaster, the Zodiac Age, is one of my top games that I'm playing right now, and I'm enjoying it. I love that game. They did a great job with it. I'm glad they released it again because not a lot of people got to enjoy it on PS2.
I need to get it and play it because I haven't played. That's one of the only ones I haven't played yet, and everybody has told me it's such a great one. So
yeah, it is. I was really impressed with it, especially the job system they put in there now. But 15 kind of picked off from that, and now we're going to remake Final Fantasy VII, and guess what? You're not going to have the same battle system because somehow it's got to change. And I kind of wish they would just leave the old battle system in there.
Well, from what I'm hearing about Final Fantasy VII is it's almost it's not just a remake, it's almost like a re-edit of the entire game.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole new experience.
It's not going to be, it's going to have the same characters, but the story actually might be a little different and might start in a different place than where it was from the beginning. So, you're looking at, it could be a hugely different game, or it could just be a straight-up remaster with better graphics. I don't know yet. I haven't...
No, it's not going to... It's going to be a different game. They've already said it's not going to be the same. Yeah. and the battle system's going to be more like Final Fantasy 15, which I liked it, but, when you only have control of one character, and you kind of put... And you can kind of get them to do things.
Yeah, you have limited
if you want to do a
control.
special technique. Yeah, you have limited control with them, but... God, man, I just like to deck my guys out in the best stuff, and actually, I don't know, it's just different.
Yeah.
But I liked 15 as well, but
15 was fun, yeah.
The old. Why don't they never? When are they going to remake Final Fantasy 6 or Final Fantasy 3 in the US? That was the best. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants the remake, and they're kind of like, we don't want to touch it. Maybe they're scared they're going to mess it up.
Well, I completely get that. I mean, it's a phenomenal game. It has a great story to it, and one of our next podcasts will definitely cover that. And unlike this one, we'll actually cover nothing but Final Fantasy 3, and I'll let Hollywood run on it because that's one of his favorite games. It's one of my favorites too, but he definitely knows the lore of that a lot more and a lot deeper than I do, and I'll definitely let him run with that, and I'll play host to that game, to that podcast.
Yeah, that one I'm really gonna want to kind of probably either replay again before we do that.
Yeah, definitely.
I got to do it justice. I can't just kind of wing it like we're doing this one a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we've both been under the weather this past week, and that's why we're a little slow on getting these podcasts out too as well. So we apologize to our listeners, for getting this out a little slower than normal. But we wanted to make sure that we got something out for you, especially with one of our loves. I mean, the RPGs are our passion. We really do have pull toward RPGs, and Final Fantasy 2 was the starting of all of it. So we just want to make sure that you understand our passion, and hopefully you've seen that through this podcast so far up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, RPGs are definitely one of my favorite ones. But yeah, Final Fantasy 6, it's just so massive. If you try to remake that with like modern graphics and stuff,
it
would take 3 Blu-ray discs probably if you did it right, because it was so, the way that, you can finish that game with like 3 characters of 14 or something, a massive amount of characters that you can find. And just when you think you're about to finish it, you get tossed into this other world, and that's really where the game kind of really starts for your open world. And like I said, you can go recruit the other guys that's lost in that new world, or you can go ahead and try to get to the last guy like pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And just that, oh man, it just had so many things to do. I remember I finished it before I realized you could go recruit all the other people. I only got a handful of them, and then I get this big strategy guide, and it's I can recruit all these people, and I just fell in love with that game all over again.
Yeah.
And that really is my favorite game still to this day. Just the characters in there, the way that they, the characterization, where they just kind of unfold each character's story and how they intertwine, and so good.
Well, unlike Final Fantasy 2 for us, Final Fantasy 3 for us, you get like Hollywood saying, you get multiple stories. You don't just get Cecil's story and little tidbits of everybody else's. You get full stories from everybody in that playthrough. I mean, I remember the Moggles were introduced in that one, and I love those characters. They're just fun, they're fun little characters. They don't pull off a whole lot. You actually play as one. One of them can be on your team. But it was a really neat little character that got put in there. And if you look through Final Fantasies after that, you see the Moggles pop up in a lot of them. There's one of the characters in 10, they carry around a Moggle doll if you look really closely. And then in Final
Fantasy, it's a weapon.
Yeah,
can get.
That's right, it's one of the weapons. And then in Final Fantasy 15, you can actually find Moggle dolls out there too, if you do some searching. Yeah, it's one of those.
They like to bring
things.
all the little things in there, yeah.
So,
chocobos and airships and Sid, and they always have to carry those over.
Sid is in every single one of them in some form or fashion, if I'm not mistaken. I think there is
just his name, yeah. There's nothing no related.
Yeah.
That's what kind of. They just kind of put a Sid in there. Biggs and Wedge are the same, which actually ironically comes from Star Wars.
Yep.
That's where they get it. And so that's funny that it stays in there. And by the way, man, that new Star Wars trailer is sick.
I've seen that. Yeah, that was pretty awesome, dude.
That was a great one.
Dude.
That really was. It told us all kind of stuff without telling us anything. And it's just like, this is perfect.
Hey, that brings me into a good idea. Guys, if you out there listening, I'm a big Star Wars geek. I know Hollywood is. We might do you a Star Wars podcast one day, just for the heck of it. Throw one together and throw some of the video games in there and just chat it all up, because that might be a fun one to do one day. Especially bringing that up, because it makes me really excited talking about Star Wars, because that's something that me and my wife, since we've gotten married, Star Wars, the new stuff has come out. That's our date. Friday mornings after it was released, we go watch it, because we can send the kid off and we can go watch the movie together. So. That's one of the sentimental things.
A Star Wars one.
So,
and we can just talk about Rogue Squadron or something. But,
exactly. I mean, you got a couple of them. You got the pod racing game in there too.
I forgot about that one.
Oh yeah, it was evil. I hated that
you
game.
had that
Oh
one.
yeah, terrible game. But
Rogue Squadron and Shadows of the Empire, which used to be canon, and now I don't think it is anymore.
It is not. Yeah, it is.
Since they re-released a lot of stuff's not canon anymore.
Since Disney took it over, they threw out a lot of canon. So be prepared for a lot of things, because Shadows of the Empire technically was leading into 7, 8, and 9, and so you don't have any of that coming through. So
Shadows of the Empire was what happened between.
It would be between 6 and 7.
No, 6 and 7 was no. This is what happened. Shadows of the Empire is what happened between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Was it? I really thought it was before. I thought it was like
because it starts off in Hoth, and so you have to do the Hoth
that's
scene.
right. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So that's what happened with that one.
Yeah,
but that was canon for Dash Rendar, and then it his story, and then Disney said, the parts we don't like, we're just going to do away with. This will be an extended. It's actually 2 Star Wars lines. It's just that standard. I don't know how they did it, but that's sad.
We'll have fun. We'll have fun with that in the podcast. I got some stuff I want to talk about on that, because that's you're making me starting to have that reminiscing thing and talk about that kind of.
Yeah, we need to do one of those. We need to do Shadows of the Empire too. That was a great one.
Oh yeah, that was a fun game. But
GoldenEye.
Oh yeah, that will definitely be a fun one. You'll just hear me rant entire game about how I kept on getting shot with a stupid golden gun all the time.
Let's do an N64 game next.
Okay,
we haven't done an N64
we'll do it. We'll do an N64 game for you listeners out there. So we'll do that next. But we're creeping up on our hour mark here. So Hollywood, you got anything to add about these games? Other than how much they have influenced our gaming throughout the years.
No, I think we just talked about enough about our experiences with it, man. I just wish we had more to get into the story of it and all, but it's such an in-depth story that, go experience it for yourself. Really, if you have not played this game, you're missing out on. If you like RPGs, it doesn't matter. You'll turn on the graphics and be like, oh, man, this is an older, especially new generation folks. But just bear with it for a little bit, and that story's going to suck you right in, and you'll really enjoy it, and it's kind of an enriching experience, and you can just kind of see where it's come from, and how this has changed in the past few years with the gameplay versus story. But back in the day, you didn't have all these fancy graphics and stuff. You just had fun factor and story, and that's what I love the Super Nintendo for. That's one of my favorite systems, because you had to have fun factor to keep people playing, and that's not nostalgia. I've played games that I've bought games that I have not finished or never even played as a kid, and I've played them all the way through because they're just so much fun. So the fun factor is definitely a big draw for the Super Nintendo. They also have the Final. If you don't have a Super Nintendo, you can do emulators, whatever. There's all kind of ways to play it. It's readily available, so you really have no excuse to not play it if you want to. But other than that, man, that's really all I got about it.
Yeah. Well, guys, this is a history, basically more of a history lesson for you of RPGs, especially starting off with Final Fantasy 2 than just a Final Fantasy 2 in-depth review. Maybe one day, if we get a chance to sit down and play it, we'll give a nice long story review of it. But we gave you some high points of it. We hoped you enjoyed listening to us talk about and have our ramblings about how Final Fantasy 2 in specific has influenced us throughout the rest of our gaming. And as you can see, it's really touched us in a lot of different areas instead of just gaming. It made us jump all the way into our Star Wars reminiscing and other games as well. So it's a huge impact for us, and we hope you've enjoyed listening to us, talk about it and ramble on about things. So Hollywood, if you don't have anything else to add for us, then I guess that's our wrap up today for Hollywood Cole. This is Clearfire. Thank you guys so much. Or go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I just want to say, because I'm going to push this I just found out that we've been posting the links in like Facebook and stuff, and that does not go to the podcast. That goes to an app to download on the phone. So that's the Podbean app, which is a great way to, if you want to listen to it, you can click one of the links that we're going to post out on Facebook, and you'll get the Podbean app, which you can subscribe or whatever. And a lot of people listen to it off the Podbean app, which is cool. I just didn't know that's what happened, because people were going, I don't know where it is. I said, just go to Facebook and click it. Well, I found out just recently that doesn't work. So I'm going to post a link to the actual web page also within that description. So you guys can click on this. If you're listening to this, I guess you found it. But tell your friends. I'm going to post the actual link in the description, So you can get it that way. Yeah. So
and then also too,
Interesting.
we've got our email set up as well now. So it's HnK video game experience at gmail.com. We'll make sure you have links to it so you can see it. So you can send us email, send us comments, ideas, questions. If you hear something we're talking about wrong, man, we don't mind hearing corrections. We're just talking from memory and trying to remember what we had from back then. But because we feel that's a more authentic way of sharing this with you. I don't want to regurgitate something you can go look up on Google or Yahoo that you can read or whatever. I mean, yeah, we do a little bit of that, but that helps jog our memories on what we played back in the day. So,
cool.
Just check us out, and guys, thanks for hanging in here with us and listening again. Once again, for Hollywood Cole, this is Clearfire, and thanks for listening to HnK Video Game Experience.
Later.